Uh-oh. I don't know what happened. Here we are. Can you still see me okay?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay.
See and hear you.
Okay, are there people in here?
Yes, I see more names coming up. Hi, everyone.
Okay. Oh, I see people in the chat. This is so exciting. Good morning, everybody. Okay, you can take us away. We're ready.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Harrison, and we're so happy to have all of y'all from a traditional residential. Today, my name is Vanita Fricks, and just want to remind everyone to use the Q&A chat questions, and we can help. Good to go, Vanita. Take it away.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this session. Hi, Quentin. Hi, everybody. Quentin is one of my old babies. I see you. So for this presentation, we're going to talk about taking that leap in a transition from a traditional programming model to a residential curriculum. So before we jump into that, I thought it was appropriate for you all to know a little bit more about me. Again, my name is Vanita Fricks. I'm one of the assistant directors for Housing and Residence Life over at UCA. Go Bears. I see a lot of Bears on here. I am over our apartment style living, Greek housing, honors housing, our residential curriculum, yay, and camps and conferences. In the middle, you'll see me with my 6 lovely grad students. And then on the right is my cohort, as I am a member of the 2018 Interdisciplinary Leadership Studies program here at UCA. So that's a little bit about me, and we'll hop into it. So today we'll learn about the differences between the traditional programming model and a residential curriculum, steps that we took to implement the residential curriculum, how to create that buy-in for staff, and then how to develop documents for the transition from a traditional programming model to a residential curriculum. I did want to say that this is our first year in. We created our curriculum during last semester with our committee, and we are moving forward with implementation. So hopefully we'll get to come back next year to let you all know how it goes. So the residential curriculum is a co-curricular framework, and it describes basically all the work that we do with our residents in housing and residence life. So not just our programs, but think about it holistically. What do we do? From the bulletin boards to our intentional resident interactions, everything that we do is a part of that. So what we do enhances that resident learning and development. It supports the learning mission of our university, and it answers that one big question: what do we want residents to learn as a result of living in our residential communities at the University of Central Arkansas or at your institution? So we're going to dive right in to the differences in approach. So the traditional programming model identifies a list of general priorities and categories based on a reaction to needs based by the residents. It's group focus and it's standalone sessions. Well, the curricular approach is clearly defined, it's narrow, and it focuses on educational goals based on professional assessment of the educational needs of our residents. So it emphasizes their individual needs as well. It's based on specific lesson plans or scripts. And then it talks about the outcomes. And then those outcomes, of course, are accessible. So everything that we do in a residential curriculum is highly intentional. We also have the review and the approval process because, again, We're starting out as others are and have, and we want to make sure that what we're doing fits our institution and fits our residents. So, moving forward, the main differences in the approach can be seen right here in this diagram. So with the traditional programming model, we start out talking about, okay, what program are we going to do? And then say, okay, well, this is what the students will do during the programs, and this is what we hope they learn. Well, with the curricular approach, we start out with what is it that we hope that our students engage in and what they learn from our events. So very intentional with those learning outcomes. Then from the learning outcomes, we say, well, what kind of experiences do we want to give our students during these events to make sure that our learning outcomes are met, leading to what do we do? So I wanted to give you all an example of what our current programming model looks like. We have a wellness wheel model, and it looks at 4 different areas, 5 really: academic and social supports, engagement, responsible living, and diversity. So with these different components of the wellness wheel, our RAs plan 2 programs per month, per semester, and we encourage them to hit every area of the wellness wheel. So for buildings that we have maybe 10 resident assistants, you can just imagine how many programs go on in a month. And then we encourage residence coordinators to plan 1 large community event with their staff. So again, like a staff of 10, we're looking at 21 programs a month for 1 community. That's a ton. So instead, we wanted to think about residential curriculum and want to say, hey, well, what are the benefits in implementing this on our campus? Again, being focused and intentional. It's supported by theory. It lessens that burden on our staff, and we'll talk about that in just a few. Less programs with higher quality, direct connections with the university and department mission, vision, values, and then providing those direct and indirect accessible outcomes. Now, what you really came here for, what are the steps that we need to create a residential curriculum? First is always your leadership. So whenever you want to implement something new at your institution, think about, well, let's get our leadership on board first. So you get buy-in from your departmental leadership. I met with our associate director for residence life, and I said, hey, let's talk about a residential curriculum. And it actually came up to create a committee. So with the committee, you have to make sure you have the right people in the right seats on your boat. So for our committee, I decided that we should choose residence coordinators because they're the hall directors who are on the ground. They know the personalities and the characteristics of their community, and they really have very good opinions and great voices that they can add to make sure that we implement this the right way. So at UCA, we have residential colleges, we have traditional halls, we have Greek housing, honors housing, and then traditional style halls. So all in apartment complexes. All of those mini residence coordinators were represented at our table of 8 graduate students and myself to make sure that we could really build this curriculum up. We did our research. So there are so many institutions that use residential curriculums, and we wanted to make sure that we looked to see, well, what can be applicable to our university? How have they built this up? And also reading books. So we'll talk about that later as well. And then we start developing. Really big shout out to SWACUHO. Thank you, SWACUHO, so much, because we would not have been able to do this without you. A few years back, SWACUHO gave us a book called Developing a Co-Curricular Learning Model by Dr. Paul Brown. I encourage you, if you're trying to build a residential curriculum, this book will be your bread and butter to be able to get all of your documents and understand the true steps and processes on how to build a residential curriculum. This insert is actually from that book, and it's sponsored by RoomPack as well, so shout out to RoomPack. So the 10 essential elements of building a residential curriculum, they include directly connecting to the institutional mission, learning goals and outcomes derived from the defined educational priority. It's based on research and theory. Departmental learning outcomes drive that development of educational strategies. Traditional programs may be one type of a strategy that we use, but again, it's not the only type. Our student leaders and staff members play key roles in the implementation, but they are not expected to be educational experts, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Represents developmentally sequenced learning. It engages our campus partners, and we identify and integrate them into our plans. And then the plans are developed through a review process. And then it's a cycle of assessment for student learning and educational strategies. So the first thing was we developed an educational priority. How you create an educational priority at your institution is to pull from both your university mission, vision, values and your departmental mission, vision, and values. So out on the screen for you are examples of our mission, vision, and values for our university and department at UCA. And really quickly down to the bottom, we'll skip down to the values of intellectual excellence, community, diversity, integrity, growth, leadership, and respect. When we were creating the educational priority, we were really excited to see that our values and our mission as a department really did align with the university. So from those mission, vision, and values from our department and university, we created an educational priority that was set to engage our residents through learning about our 5 goals, which we'll talk about, to holistically develop our residents who are civically engaged scholars and leaders. So a little note for you all is that our mission, vision, and values talk about us and the services that we provide, but the educational priority focuses on our students and what they will and should be able to do after leaving our residence halls. So our learning outcomes for our priority areas included intellectual excellence and scholarship, identity and personal wellness, civic engagement and leadership, multicultural competence and inclusive community, and sustainability. So for intellectual excellence and scholarship, we wanted our students to be able to develop reasoned opinions and conclusions, extend that learning outside of the classroom, enhance scholarly capacities through research, creative endeavors, and practical experiences, and then also the use of technological advances. For identity and personal wellness, we wanted our students to be able to define and seek a balance between their physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and mental health to be able to achieve that purposeful and fulfilling life. So a part of that means that we're going to focus on their personal and professional development. We want to make sure that their personal journey to find their identities is supported by our staff. And then we want to enhance that interaction and understanding amongst a diverse group of individuals. Our next one was civic engagement and leadership. So students will have the opportunity to participate in community service initiatives with all local, national, and global communities. We want our students to be able to act with integrity and honesty, courage, and trustworthiness. And then we want to support a community in a climate of respect and thoughtfulness amongst students, faculty, staff, and the people of our community. The next one was multicultural competence and inclusive community. So we want to be able to attract and support a diverse student and staff population. We want to be able to work, learn, and develop in a community that embraces all of our diverse individuals on campus, and then invite them to have a seat at our table. Sustainability. Sustainability was a really hot topic on our committee because everywhere, all of the previous 4 learning goals that we went with was something that we heard about before or something that we saw implemented really well on our campus. Sustainability is something that we said, oh, we should do this and we'll do a few programs here and there. However, it has not been a focus for us to really target. So we thought that it was important that we took sustainability seriously. So For this facet, our students will apply knowledge and utilize resources that support the current and future populations and global longevity. So we want to make sure that they're learning about safe and healthy environments and how to promote those, and giving respect to our campus and making sure we're not littering, we're respecting property, and we're doing all that we can to make our earth well. So outside of creating those different elements, we wanted to lean on our student development theory. So we have 3 that we use to be able to connect to our residential curriculum. The first one was Schlossberg's transition theory. Schlossberg's theory is one that we are using as our overarching theory for our residential curriculum because it covers our students and our residents' matriculation from beginning to end. So what happens when our students come to our campus? What can we do to support them? What kind of support do they already have? They're coming into a new situation. What strategies do we need to use to help them to cope? And then we have moving through and moving out with those same instances. As a support to that, we use Aston theory of student involvement, which basically says the more that students are involved and engaged, the more we'll be able to retain them on our campuses. Finally, we use Sanford's challenge and support theory because we wanted to make sure that we are really challenging and supporting our students. However, we knew that it was not a standalone theory. So if you're challenging and supporting, but how and when? And we thought that this theory really coupled well with Schlossberg's theory and Aston's theory as well. So we wanted to pay attention to the different phases of what happened when you move into a residential community or you move into any new phase. You get introduced. So think about our first year students when they come onto our campuses. This is a new environment for them. We want them to interact and be involved in our communities. And then once they start to get comfortable, they know their role and they gain their influence in their community. And then later they become invested. And it is our hope that by the end of the year or the end of the first semester in the year, that the community as a whole starts to create an identity for itself. So, for example, we have multiple residential colleges, one of them being STEM at Arkansas Hall. So we wanted to make sure that whenever someone hears STEM at Arkansas Hall or Baird in Health Promotion and Wellness, people knew the identity and the culture and the feeling of those residential communities. So I will show you a few of the documents so you can see what we actually use to build this and make it come alive. Yay, it did it. So the first is the educational sequencing plan. We decided as a committee to differ a little bit from other residential curriculums that we've seen. They have gone by, a lot of them went by years. So first year students, second year students, third year students, fourth year and beyond. Well, we thought it was important to, again, focus on the nature of our residential communities. So we created different sequencing plans for our traditional halls, residential colleges, and then our upper class communities. So here's an example laid out for you all. You see from month to month at the top, we have those 6 I's that I just discussed. And then on the side are our 5 facets of our educational priority and the learning outcomes associated with each. I did want to take a second to pause to say we created those learning outcomes based on Bloom's taxonomy to make sure that they were sound and that we were really making sure that we got something that was accessible later on. So, for example, if we are in September in a traditional hall, we want to make sure that our residents are developing skills to be lifelong, self-directed learners and scholars. However, if we move down on to November, we want to make sure that they're identifying and addressing important issues within their community. Again, we see them being involved and we see them having influence and being invested in their community. So that's what we hope to see for them. For our residential colleges, it may look a little different for them. We may ask our students to, in the month of October, cultivate those enriched learning communities, learning opportunities within the community. That is very essential for our residential colleges because we have our live-in faculty, our academic directors who do an awesome job teaching inside of our community, our residential communities. We want to make sure they have an opportunity to share in this experience as well. As we know, when our students matriculate, they are starting to think about, well, what's the next thing? How can I grow and develop to make sure that I'm ready for the next step? So for our upper class students, we may do something different. Maybe in October, we want them to start to demonstrate what it means to be interactive and reflective in an ethical process of influencing the achievement of common goals within a group or community. So as we see one group starting to introduce themselves to our institution, another group is starting to make impacts and changes where they live. So what do we do with all that information? We create something that we use. We decided to create our community learning plans to give them a cute little name. So since we're the UCA Bears, of course, we made a bear plan. And that's not it. See. Here we are. So for our bear plans, we created a name that says Building Engagement, Activity, and Resource Plan. So of course, we want to remind everyone of our mission, vision, and values and our educational priority. Let's take a pause here. This is a document that we would encourage we require our residence coordinators to use to be able to write those events for their communities. Here's the thing. Earlier, we talked about how we wanted our programs to be more in-depth and intentional. What that means for our residential community starting in the fall of 2021 is that our RAs will be able to do spontaneous programs. Let's go hang out at the cafeteria. Let's go take a walk around campus. So they're still spending time with their residents, but the focus is making sure that our students are getting the really rich experiences that we hope that they gain. So how we do this is that our residence coordinators, our hall directors, will write 3 bear plans per month, our large months. So September, October, November, having 1 in December and 2 in August, and the same kind of format throughout the spring semester. So they create these bear plans to really plan out what those events will look like. So here's a really great example. We had every person on our committee create a bear plan so we can give that as examples to our peers when we get ready to launch our residential curriculum. So we have the event duration. It's going to take about an hour to complete. The name of the event is the Ferris Game of Life. So Ferris is the name of the residential community. And then we have the purpose to show the stereotypes that individuals of different identities face and understand what happens socially for those individuals. And after going through the game, we will debrief after to help students understand those different stereotypes and how to abandon assumptions and stereotypes within our identity. So we want to know, how does that connect to our curriculum? So we go to that educational priority of identity and personal wellness with a focus on personal and social development. So they created learning objectives for each of these events. For this one is to be able to understand different stereotypes and certain identities, understand how to behave socially, and display knowledge and development for their own identities and understanding. So effective assessment, we want to, at the end of the event, be there to debrief for students to express their thoughts and feelings. We want to use resources such as our counseling center and the Office of Diversity and Community to provide for the students to gain more knowledge and understanding. I want to take a pause there. Again, we talked about earlier how our resident assistants are very bright and they are able to help build the richness of our community and make sure that everyone is engaged. But we want to pull in some of our campus partners and the professionals to really hone in on those learning outcomes that we want our students to receive. So students will be given a short survey, and then we thought it was important to kind of seesaw it so you can see what our students are learning before the events and after the events. So they have assessments before to learn, what about their identities or others' identities that they want to learn about, or if they knew about other identities. And then at the end, ask them questions about, well, what did you learn about yourself? What would you recommend this? And name a source that you learned from this event. Again, we're still being intentional, but this time we're being intentional about our departmental funds and our budget. So we want to make sure that whatever we plan out is something that is really great for our department that we can use for a long time and pass it on, that does not cost us a lot of money. So for this event, simple. Index cards, stickers, Sharpies, and then tables and chairs that may already be there. However, this event, here it is, can be done utilizing breakout rooms and virtually. So let's say in the fall, COVID-19 is still here. We can still be able to utilize this program in a forum such as this. So 1 or 2 people per station, fake money, Monopoly, all of those different things. We also have them plan it out to the T. What does it mean to, what do you need to do 2 weeks before the event, a week before the event, the day of, what do you do for start 5-10 minutes into it, halfway, the last 10 minutes, and then after. And then the activities planned during the event. So for this event, we're selecting stickers that represent different race and class identities. We're going to hit a red star for Black and wealthy, orange star for white and wealthy, and so on and so forth. And then you have different letters that represent different conviction identities, if they've been convicted before or had a felony conviction. We also have the numbers of children placed, the numbers that represent different parental identities, if they have no children or if they are a parent. We also have different identities such as their jobs or the housing authority, bank, jail, and education, those locations. So throughout this, they get to go through the game of life and seeing how those different identities impact the way they may be able to navigate through their daily life. So that was an example of a BEAR plan, but we want to make sure that this BEAR plan that was created by our residence coordinators is something that we can actually use and that is good and sound and will impact the community in a positive way. With that, we do assessments. Here we go. We do assessments by our committee. So we'll show you the timeline a little bit later, but we have an assessment to look at those BEAR plans to make sure, again, that they're what our community needs. So there will be 2 evaluators per BEAR plan, and they'll literally go through those different areas that you saw before to see if they are emerging in basic, acceptable, or intermediate, and target advanced. So we'll give you a few examples. For the event purpose, target and advanced, we want them to have a purpose that describes the overall purpose of why the event or activity is appropriate to support the fulfillment of the learning outcomes and event objectives, and that they clearly define the partnerships and collaborations that will be needed. And the form kind of flows that way. So we assess them, and then anyone who receives like a 0 or a 1 in a category, we'll have them come in and do some office hours with our community to say, hey, this is where you can improve in this area to make your event really be successful. After the event is over, again, with the residential curriculum, we want to make sure that we have data and that we are assessing. So we ask that our hall directors assess too. So they have an assessment where they say, if the event was canceled and why, and then when they will plan to reschedule it, who was responsible for facilitating this event. So again, I'll take another pause here. So our idea is that in order to get that buy-in from our resident assistants, they have the opportunity to put on this program. What that means is we'll have a team of 3 that we call our leaders for that event, and they are responsible for the setup. They're responsible for getting our residents engaged and creating a plan that the staff should follow to make sure that we are really prepared and excited and pumped up for our event. So we also want to know how many residents are attending this event, which is really important for our residential curriculum because, again, this is working to not over-program our students. So hopefully we'll have more attendance at quality programs. So again, we use those same areas from the BEAR plan to make sure that we're checking in to see that we did what we were supposed to do. Were our campus partners engaged with our students? Were they helpful? Did they bring resources? Was it really effective for them to be there? So we wanted to include this section because sometimes our campus partners may not know exactly what it is that we're looking for. So do we need to describe it differently? And then if we see, reoccurring issues, is it time for us to sit down with our campus partners to say, hey, we've seen that this is something that has come across a few times in our assessments. What can we do to work together better to make sure that we get the outcome that we're looking for? Oh, I want to revisit that one more time. It was something else I wanted to show you all. Okay, and then at the end of every section, we have additional comments. So if they wanted to say something that wasn't necessarily on the evaluation and let us know about the event, we welcome those. And then at the end, pros and cons of the event and suggestions for improvement. So we thought that was important to include because hopefully with the residential curriculum, again, we're making less work for our staff and it's not so much of a burden and the residents are really getting the fullness of their experiences in our residential communities. So hopefully if our events go really well, they can start to become staples in our community. And then that adds to that identity piece that we're looking for at the end of the year to connect to the residence halls. And then I also wanted to show you all our timeline. How are we rolling this out? What does it look like at UCA? So here's just a little bit of what we've done through our committee. So up until this point, our committee members have written a BEAR plan for their community. So at this point, we have 8 different BEAR plans that we're working with. We've reviewed them as a committee using that assessment tool. And then next week, and then they're starting to assess them. Starting to implement them in their residential community. So putting on these events to see, will this really work? Coming back from that, we assess coordinators will fill out that second assessment tool that I'll show you all. And then we will pull all of those RAs who are in those buildings to do a focus group to see how they felt about it. I did want to give a nod to one of our residential communities who the RAs are responsible and they picked their lead RAs already and they are excited. And they said, wait a minute, can we do this for the rest of the semester? Because this is great to us. We don't have to do as many programs so we can get more residents involved and it'll just be better for our community. So our RAs are already excited and I'm really looking forward to the feedback that we get from their initial events. Tomorrow is when we'll have a residential curriculum retreat all day on a Saturday. But we're working to make sure that we really roll this out the right way and we bring on board the rest of our residential residence coordinators and our assistant directors as well. In the meantime, when we ask them to write their BEAR plans for next semester, we want to make sure that we're doing workshops to say, okay, well, you need assistance writing it. The committee will be there to make sure that they're hitting the points that they need to, and they really understand how to write a BEAR plan. And then we hope to have the BEAR plan submitted by early April, and then we'll look at them as a committee and use that assessment tool to make sure that they're really good to go, and then give any feedback to our residence coordinators in hopes to get the final BEAR plans back by the middle of May before they leave for internships and their new jobs. So that's how we roll it out. One more pause for us is that we want these BEAR plans to be written for the entire semester, from August to December, and then from January to May, and then we compile them in a nice little booklet, and then we'll have some discussion about that in just a second. Again, our residential curriculum is more than just programs. We're talking community agreements. So when our residents initially move into our res halls, we have those great floor meetings, which will continue to happen. But we wanted to create community agreements with our students to make sure that they know what are some things that we expect from each other in our community outside of what's here, and actually have them take the poster board, pass it around, and sign it and put it up somewhere on their hall or on their wing, so they have some sort of ownership in creating the culture and environment on their floor. Those one-on-one conversations with our students, those residential interactions, really getting to know them and their needs to be able to support them the right way. Those roommate agreements, bulletin boards that follow those different areas of the residential curriculum, our RHA Cubs, which are our students who get with RHA to be able to create programs and initiatives within the halls that are not a part of our student staff, service opportunities, and again, that community ownership. So how do we create buy-in? Again, making sure we have the right committee. As we have all of these different residential communities and populations, we want to make sure that our hall directors represent those as well. So we want to be thoughtful to say, okay, well, will this be something that works for everyone? Again, that's how we thought to break down our sequencing plan by traditional hall, upper class hall, and our residential colleges. Getting our campus partners on board. Yesterday, we had a rollout information session with our academic directors, who are the faculties and residents of our residential colleges. And we rolled it out to them, and they also thought that this was a great way for them to be able to implement their curriculum that they have for their different residential colleges, along with housing and residence life programs. Focus on groups, focus groups with student staff. Again, once we roll through that the first 8 programs or first 8 events that we are doing, we want them to come back and tell us how they really felt about their BEAR plans. So we do some tweaks here and there in between to make sure that our student staff will continue to. And then this is also how we created buy-in. We wanted to make sure that this was something that was fun for our committee. In our first committee meeting, we said, well, you know, we want to take ownership of this. And it was literally a joke to talk about how we're the RC committee, and we brought up RC Cola. So we created our own little logo based off of that for our residential curriculum committee. We made shirts. We made it something that was really fun for us, and it reminds us that we are innovators in our department, and we're changing the culture and making sure that this is something that will have longevity with us. I wanted to acknowledge all of the theories that we used. Again, the universities we reached out to, shout out to UA Fort Smith for pieces that we were able to get from them, and then other institutions. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the wonderful residence coordinators who serve on that committee and put in such hard work. They are graduate students, so the amount of work that they put into this to create such a great result at the end, or what we hope to be, they definitely deserve their names to be here as well. And then that is all for me. I am open to any questions, so y'all can drop them in the Q&A, or you can drop them in the chat. I'll be going back and forth between both, and I'll be answering any questions that you may have live. Thank you, Don. Okay, if y'all are interested in any of the documents, or again, the room pack book that we use, you could feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to drop my email really fast in the chat. Amanda, I do see your question. Give me 1 second, and then I got you. All righty. Do you have resources that you will be willing to share with us? Yes, of course. This presentation will be viewable to you in the future. I'm actually, we do actually have a book that we can share with you. If you want, you can drop your email in the chat, and I can take it down and send it to you as well. Thanks, Amanda. And I also have your information right here at my desk. I wrote it down for you. I also have your information down. Marquise, I hope I didn't butcher your name. Excuse me if I did. Okay, I also wrote down everybody's contact information. Yay, I said it correctly. I do see your question, Don. Did you experience pushback on change from students or student staff? If so, how did you deal with that? So far, with the 8 communities that we've introduced it to, and they've started to roll out these events, we haven't gotten any pushback so far. They're really excited about only getting to do 3 programs a month, and it's as a large staff, so they're not doing micro programs anymore and over programming their residents. They're excited about having more attendance at their events as well. So if we have any pushback, I will definitely be willing to connect with you and let you know. I am copying everybody's contact information as they drop it. Okay, I see your question, Amanda. Did you find a decrease or increase in funds spent on programming when you transition to this model, or did you keep the same amount of funds and just use them differently? So we have not rolled this out fully, so I wouldn't be able to answer the questions about funds. However, at a previous institution that I used the residential curriculum, the number of funds that we used, Department of Funds, was decreased because they really had to think out what were the materials that they used and plan for the amount of people that they anticipated to attend the events. So we did see our budget being used better. Thank you, Taylor. I'm hopping over to the Q&A chat. So for a copy of the PowerPoint, actually once the session is over, I'm going to upload it. I am not technologically savvy, so I'm going to work on that and pop it in here after the session is done. Do you experience any challenges with making the curriculum applicable to all class levels, first years versus juniors? That is an excellent question. If we go back a few slides. So the way that we broke it down using Schlossberg's theory is that moving in phase is how we changed our programmatic efforts for our first year students. I can actually pull that up for you so you can see where we use that a little bit better. So our traditional halls are all first year students. And then we have our residential colleges that are majority first year students. And then we have a sprinkle of sophomore students when we have our sophomore year experience. Residential colleges. But then for our upper class communities, we have changed the way that the model is rolled out for them. So it's more applicable through different phases. I can explain this more to you if we're using this model. We'll just stick with this. If we're using this model, you can see how their interaction and involvement is different from our first year students. So you can see where we're heavier in introduction and interaction and involvement. But now for our upper class student communities, we're focused on that investment and identity more. For the PowerPoint, again, I'm going to upload it after we get done. Sharonda, I did get your contact information as well. And then Quentin, seeing as we have had a large shift into virtual engagement, are there plans to utilize any other technology elements in programming? Yes. I also want to highlight one of the BEAR plans that rolled out 2 days ago, actually, in our Stadium Park apartment complexes. They had a Black History Jeopardy event, and they used ODC to be able to help them facilitate that, finding Black history facts. And we use Zoom to be able to interact with our residents, and they had the opportunity to turn their voices on, type in the chat. So we do also try to focus on how can we make these BEAR plans more applicable to technological advances during COVID. Just like our example with the Ferris Hall. Ferris Game of Life, that one can also be modified to be able to work in a forum again, just like this one. What considerations should be taken when creating a curriculum for a community college? Again, I would encourage you to focus on what is your department's mission and what is your vision for your department and those students. We try to think about, well, what do our students need right now, and following the trends of what is applicable to our community. In our BEAR plans, one of the things that we assess is this on trend with our community? Is this on trend with our university? Are we really adhering to the needs of the people that are here with us right now? But if you get a standard community learning plan or get a standard residential curriculum that works on those, works on those different elements, then you'll be able to apply them across the board. How has it been for your RAs who are on staff last school year to adjust to these new processes? For those who have seen it so far, again, they're excited that they won't be basically burn out on the amount of events that we ask them to put on and attend. For a while, they attended both departmental events and their large-scale events in their communities, and they still had to put on 2 events. So we have decreased significantly the amount of events and activities we've asked them to be a part of, and we make sure that they're really full in the amount of opportunities that we're trying to provide to our residents. Hopping back over to the open. Y'all have some really good questions. Here we go. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? When I was watching the tutorial on how to use this platform, I will be able to drop the PowerPoint here, and y'all will be able to use it to be able to view it as you came to the session. So you will be able to have access to that. And then I will also send out the PowerPoint to everyone who requested the information as well. Okay. I'm hopping back over to the Q&A. My computer has a little bit of a lag in it. Oh, I see it. I see it. The assessment portion of the curriculum looks great. Will that data be potentially used by your division to highlight not just the benefits of living in halls, but also the experiential living benefits of student staff? I think that's an awesome idea. That's something that we didn't think about, but I am definitely taking that note. Thank you, Marquise. I took a picture of your question. Thank you so much. Did I get everyone's questions? I'm trying to make sure I got them all. Okay. And again, I believe I got everybody's information down, but should you not receive an email from me by the end of business today, go ahead and email me at vgraham1@uca.edu.
Do we have any last questions before we wrap things up today, everyone? I do want to thank you for your time today, Vanita. It was a wonderful presentation and really appreciate you coming to share all of this information with us, especially the theoretical background. I'm a science girl myself, so I love that. I do want to remind everyone. Round of applause to Ms. Vanita. We really everyone. Y'all have a great day, and you can jump into the next session. Okay.
Thank you.
Make sure that you got the messages that I sent you in the backstage chat just about your own presenter survey.
You said what?
Oh, I just sent you some messages about the post presenter survey.
Okay.